Chapter 501, Bait. After sending out the telegram and cleaning up the desk, White Shark Hamilton relaxed completely. He was finally in the mood and had the ability to think about the details of what had happened to him. The first question that popped into his mind was, what about the bouncers outside? He propped himself up with both hands and walked heavily to the door. When he opened it to take a look, he found that several of his men were standing there unsteadily, telling each other jokes involving women. Hamilton's anger rushed to his head, but he soon calmed down. The muscles on his face twitched slightly as he pounded on the open door. Thump! The bouncers were startled and instinctively turned to look at the door. Boss! Boss! Seeing who was making the sound, they hurriedly stood there and stammered. White Shark took a deep breath and asked, "Did you see anyone enter my room?" "Yes, Lardero, he said that there was a situation downstairs." The bouncers were confused by the question. "Boss, you were the one who let him in." As soon as they finished talking, they suddenly thought of other explanations and asked, "Boss, was something inside stolen?" Hamilton's expression sank, and he shook his head. "Don't doze off." Thud. He drew back and closed the door, leaving the few bouncers puzzled as they exchanged looks, suspecting that their boss was drunk. In the room, the tall and fat Hamilton frowned and started pacing back and forth. Lardero, they saw Lardero. That guy, can he change into someone else's appearance? As a collaborator who helped pirates sell their loot and gather intelligence, White Shark Hamilton was no stranger to all sorts of sea rumors. The first thing he thought of was the former pirate Admiral Kalangos, who was said to be capable of turning into anyone. However, he quickly made more connections. It might not be this mystical ability. If it's really close to the description in the rumors, illusions, cues, and mental manipulation can all do similar things. There's something amiss. That fellow appeared refined and gentle on the outside, but he's inwardly mad and has terrifying strength. With the character he showcased, he should have knocked unconscious or killed anyone who had seen him, before strolling to the door and very politely knocking on the door. If it's to avoid creating a huge commotion so as to not leave behind too much information or exposing secrets related to his sequence, then he could have used a more covert method, like climbing through the window. Very contradictory. There's only one explanation for this contradiction. He was putting on an act. Was he disguising his personality or disguising his strength, or both? When he thought of this, Hamilton suddenly stopped and put all the details together. That guy is a novice. His madness is a disguise. His strength is demonstrated by relying on some mystical item. Yes, that must be it. This can explain the contradictions. He didn't climb up the walls and enter through the window because he's a low-sequence beyonder, and he isn't good in such aspects. The focus of his mystical item isn't in this domain. In order to successfully enter my room, he was willing to lower his head and address me as boss because he was purely relying on the mystical item. He wasn't too confident about himself and doesn't have enough pride and madness. He acted like a madman so as to match the mystical item's effects of generating horror in others. He created pressure to ask for information. This can also perfectly explain why he left just like that. The reason why he came to find me is because he obtained such a powerful mystical item. With his elevated ambition, he wants to capture and kill some pirates to make a fortune. Once he knew that I'm serving Silver Coin, Viper Odor, and Admiral of Blood's intelligence officer, Old Quinn, to the point of being involved with the Queen Mystic, he got scared and fearful, so he chose to leave after acting perfunctorily. He didn't dare to kill anyone. The more Hamilton thought, the closer he felt to the truth. He hurriedly set up the radio transceiver again and flipped through the passcodes and added a telegram to concisely describe his theories. He didn't believe that he was being targeted by a hunter, because everything that had happened was a result of the inflated ambition of a young man who simply had a fortuitous encounter. He also gave the corresponding characteristics of the target. Blonde, blue eyes, not crazy, and even a little timid. Possesses a rather mystical item that might allow one to change their appearance and create illusions. In consideration of the sense of horror, the latter is more likely to be true. He's just a novice who doesn't have much experience. He specializes in mimicking a powerful aura with the help of the item. He knows a thing or two about me, and he doesn't look like an outsider who's here in Daymere Harbor for the first time. Tap, tap, tap. Hamilton stopped his finger and leaned back in satisfaction, his chair creaking under his weight. The corners of his mouth curled up a little, as though he had already seen the ending of that bastard from just now. It wouldn't end well for a fellow with a very low sequence despite possessing a powerful mystical item at sea. Many greedy sharks would rush towards him. When the time comes, I'll no longer have to worry about my problems being exposed. Under the night sky, the harbor was rather quiet. After leaving the flying fish and wine, Klein made a detour in the distance. He first walked quickly before moving slowly, his pace gradually turning into a stroll. When he was sure that no one was following him, he turned his face back to Jayamon Sparrow as he passed through the shadows. He stuffed the hem of his shirt into his trousers. He adjusted his sideburns and took out his gold-rimmed glasses, placing them on the bridge of his nose. It gave him a coldness despite his refined appearance. He began to rely on the stars to find his way back to the white agate. As he walked, he let out a soft chuckle. Amidst the cold wind, he leisurely thought, I hope White Shark is that foolish and is able to see the flaws I left behind. The persona he had set up tonight was of a new adventurer who lacked experience and made mistakes. And this person, on the other hand, knew a lot about Daymere Harbor and White Shark. He had a tempting, mystical item on him which had messed with his mind, making him a little crazy deep down. Klein's initial idea was that pirates would wander around the ocean, and even the Navy would have a hard time finding them. If he could get more accurate information from White Shark, he could of course go straight to them. If that didn't work, his identity could be used as a bait to lure some knowledgeable pirates to a predetermined location to complete the initial hunt. When it was discovered that White Shark could contact Old Quinn, the intelligence officer of Admiral of Blood, Klein's plan was completed. His acquisition of the passcodes and the frequency spectrum had allowed him to monitor the corresponding situation and grasp the target's movement. Then, by interfering with the divination of others, he could, at the most appropriate time, use the combination of having a powerful mystical item and being a weak adventurer as bait to catch a number of big fish. Now, the problem I have is that I don't have the equipment to monitor their communications. It's basically impossible to buy it at sea. I'll have to use the world's identity to get Miss Justice or Miss Magician to buy one in Backland. I'll receive the delivery via a sacrificial ritual. This is the advantage of the Tarot Club. With this in mind, Klein sighed. Seeing the white agate in sight, he quickened his pace a little and found that Donna's family and Cleves were returning from another street. Cleves greeted him by nodding his head. Just like when they officially met, he said in a low voice, I heard there was trouble at Flying Fish and Wine. Very well informed and rather familiar with Daymere Harbor. Klein smiled and replied, I only taught 2 cheats a lesson. Cleves' brows twitched slightly, suddenly feeling that his impression of Jayamon Sparrow was a little wrong. After his previous observation and interaction, he felt that, although this young adventurer was a bit sharp, a bit reserved, and a bit cold, he could still be considered someone who smiled, was polite, and knew when to advance or retreat. But now, he was a bit uncertain. He felt that there might be a hidden flame of madness hidden in the recesses of his heart. At this moment, Donna's father interrupted, Mr. Cleves, who is this? A colleague, Jayamon Sparrow, Cleves introduced in a very simple manner. With a polite smile, Klein extended his right palm. It's my honor to meet you. In the future, if you need anyone, and if you can't find Cleves and the others, you can consider me. No problem, I hope you're as strong and professional as them. Donna's father shook hands with Klein with apparent warmth and introduced himself, Ertie Branch. Klein had just released his grip on the box when his spiritual perception was triggered. He felt that there was something strange inside the gift boxes the Branch servants were holding. He quietly activated his spirit vision and discovered that the gift box contained strips of cured meat. However, the surface of the cured meat had very rich colors at the red, white, and black spots. They were things from the spirit world. There's the aura of the spirit world, but they're practically harmless. This cured meat is very special. Klein was surprised. Noticing his gaze, Donna's father laughed and said, "This is a specialty of Daymere Harbor. In the center of the island, there's an extinct volcano. There are a few cracks in the surrounding underground caves where a natural hot wind blows. Curing meat there allows the meat to gain a wonderful and unique flavor. It can be used as gifts for friends. Mr. Sparrow, if you wish to buy some, it's not too late." Unique flavor, the taste of the spirit world. Klein had a rough idea of what was going on. According to theories in mysticism, the spirit world completely overlapped with reality without interfering with it. One had to rely on the strength of a beyonder to open up a gap, but this wasn't an absolute situation. There were places in the world which had the spirit world being strong enough to slightly influence reality. In such regions, it was very easy for the dead to turn into water ghosts, zombies, and the like. There was also a non-trivial possibility that residences in such areas would have paranormal activity. A similar situation should have occurred in the interior of Daymere Harbor's underground caves, but it's not serious and doesn't cause any abnormalities, only giving the cured meat a unique flavor. There wouldn't be any problems if one doesn't eat too much of this in one sitting. Klein responded with a smile. "I'm not interested in cured meat." Only at this moment did he finally confirm that the cured meat that the bartender had previously served him was ordinary and nothing special. At this moment, the little boy, Denton, pointed at the moon in the sky and said, "It's so very red." "Yeah," Donna nodded in agreement. "Very red." Klein looked up and saw that the red moon was no different than usual. Because a child's spirit is relatively pure, he temporarily possesses certain spirit vision powers after being tainted with the spirit world's aura from eating such cured meat. Would the children on this island be in a similar situation? Ha ha, this might be the source of Daymere Harbor's folklore. Klein observed for a moment and found the answer. The group strolled back to the ship, moving up the gangway and arriving on the deck. Klein bade them farewell and went to the second-class cabin. Suddenly, his mind stirred, and he once again activated his spirit vision. He saw the huge skeleton messenger appear in front of him and drop a letter.